the baby, and here the message is touching on Samuel as well. Samuel was a pivotal figure in the history of Israel. As I said earlier, he's the last judge of Israel and the first prophet of Israel. And Israel had grown tired of the sons of Samuel. I can use that cool air, but I'm tired of fighting it, blowing my pages around. So, Israel had got tired of Samuel's sons, who was extorting them and who was having sexual relationships with the women that would come to the temple. And so because they got tired of this ungodliness, they got tired of this group of people that were supposed to be leaders of the church. How many of you know what I'm talking about? We live in a society today where people claim to be something that they're not. Where they want to have positions of authority in the church, but yet they don't live the life that's above reproach. But I want you to know something. If you're going to serve God, if you're going to be a child of God, if you're going to be a leader in the church or a leader in Christendom, you have to live above reproach. I'm not saying we don't stumble. I'm not saying we don't trip up at times. But we have to have to put forth a great effort to live above reproach, to live above ungodliness. Amen? Excuse me. We have a teaching today, they call it hyper grace. That you can do anything you want, and it's okay because all you got to do is ask God to forgive you. And there is some truth to that. God will forgive you when you mess up. But God doesn't expect you to continue to mess up and put forth no effort to live godly. Because the Bible says without holiness, no man shall see God. That if we're first of all not cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, if we're not made holy by Christ and then pursue that holiness. See, many people come to the altar, I've seen them throughout the years, come to the altar, ask God to forgive them for sins, walk away cleansed, and then go back to dabble and sin and play in a lifestyle that's displeasing to God. And then the world looks at them and says, oh, that's what a Christian is? Well, if that's what a Christian is, I don't want any part of it. I've told the story before, how when I was a young man, I was a teenager, 13 years old. We had a bar at the corner of our street. And because it was closer than any store, I would walk up there and buy me a bottle of 7-Up or a bottle of Pepsi. I'd walk up there and buy me a candy bar. And I remember standing there one day waiting for the bartender to come over and wait on me. And I seen 3 men sitting there. And the one looked over at the other. He was talking to me. He said, this man will do anything for me. He says, no matter what, no matter what I ask, he'll give to me. He says, watch. And now this was in like 72, 73. This is when $100 was a lot of money. He looked over and he said, hey, give me $100. The guy didn't question. He reached in his wallet and he pulls out a $100 bill and hands it to him. And he said, I don't need that. He said, I was just trying to prove a point. And you know what? I come to church. And we were in a little church down on West 6 with a small body of people. Everybody there, they would do anything for you. But over the years, I have seen people in church that would need help. And I'm not talking about someone that was just trying to use you. How many of you know there's a lot of people that just come up, they're panhandlers. They're professional panhandlers, just trying to find a handout. I'm talking about someone that's truly in need, and people just turn their back on them. They have no desire to help them. And I'm like, you can get more help in the bar than you can in the church. And folks, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
We're supposed to reach out and be supportive to one another. And I'm not talking about just financially. I'm talking about being there emotionally. I remember times that we would be on our knees and crying with a lady who just lost her husband. Amen. She wasn't even a member of our church. She went to another church, but her husband had died, and I remember being at the altar crying out to God, and the whole church was there crying with her. The Bible says that to mourn with those that mourn and laugh with those that laugh. Rejoice with those that are rejoicing. In other words, when you see someone blessed, be happy for them. When you see someone sad, try to support them, try to encourage them, try to be a blessing to them. That's what God called us to be. And the church sing, the temple, the worshipers of God, Israel, they sing Samuel, who was a godly man, produced a couple sons that were wicked. And they said, we don't want this. If these are the guys that's going to lord over us, if these are the guys that's going to be in control of us, we don't want them. We want a king. And so God tried to explain to Israel that his desire was that they would be a priestly nation. They would be a holy nation. They would be under his rule. That they wouldn't be under a rule of a man, but they would be under his rule. And he tried to explain to them in 1 Samuel 8 through 11, chapter 8, verses 11 through 18. He tried to explain to them. Let me read it to you real fast. It says, and Saul sent messengers unto David's house. No, I'm in the wrong chapter. That fan kept blowing the wind. I mean, kept blowing my pages. And Saul cast... No, this is not it either, is it?
Keep looking, Tim.
No, I'm like 10 pages away, man.
You'll find it.
I'll find it eventually, Jack.
Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord.
And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. This is God speaking to Israel through Samuel. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint them captains over thousands and captains over 50s. And will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confessionaries, and to be cooks and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, and even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to the officers and to the servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest men and your asses and put them to work. And he will take the tenth of your sheep, and you shall be his servants. And you shall cry out in the day, because your king, which you shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. He's saying, I want to be your king. I want to lead you. I want to be sovereign over you. But if you choose a king, then he will be your Lord. He will rule over you. He'll take your children. He'll take your sons and put them in the army. He'll take your daughters and have them, it doesn't say, but we know that they'll even be your concubines. He'll send your children to war. He'll take your vineyards. He'll take your olive yards. He'll take all your property. He'll take 10% of your seed. He'll take 10% of your income. And he's trying to explain to them that the king is not the thing that you want. You want me as your God. You want me as your Lord. You want me as your king. But no, they said, we want a king. And so we know that God had sent Samuel to anoint Saul as the king. And he would have remained a king. But the problem with Saul was Saul would not carry out the commands of the Lord. When God would give him a command, he rejected them. Excuse me. There was one particular thing that was like how many of you know